Hey, everybody, welcome to today's episode of the What Worked For You show. Today, I'm delighted to have a guest who's in my neck of the world, and he's a successful real estate investor. So we're like brothers kind of thing. But he's been at it for a decade or so, and he's just done a tremendous job creating a lot of success by being focused on not just being an entrepreneur, but sticking within that lane of real estate, heavy duty focus. And he's been able to grow his company, if I can talk right, very successfully. And it's always wonderful to interview someone that's local, kind of to where I am. We know similar markets, and he's really been able to make it happen in an environment that a lot of people say is ultra competitive. So with no further ado, Parker Stiles, thanks for joining us today on the show. How are you?
I'm doing awesome. Thanks for having me, Frank. It's been man, you and I go back to probably 20. When I first got started, you were at the RIA meetings up at the front of the room, doing your thing. And I think that was 2014, maybe, was when we had initially met, maybe at the Cherokee REI event. I don't know if you still go to any of those.
Oh my gosh, we're going way back. I'm feeling dated now.
Really, really far. Yeah, about 10 years ago, almost to the day.
Yes, yes, yes. Well, let's dive in.
Yeah.
You've scaled Barrington Homebuyers, your company, into what's really a trust and consistent force here in Georgia. In your view, what would you say is the single most important decision, or maybe it's a discipline, that's helped you keep winning over this time frame, especially in these last few years where
Yeah.
the market shot up and then it's now a lot of people say it's like dead. What's been
Yeah.
your sauce there?
Um, Gosh, I think the sauce is just consistency. I wish I had a sexier answer there, but I've got a great team. But all of these things that I'm going to say fall in line with consistency. We have a great team. We have a great set of processes, and those processes are executed well over and over and over and over and over again. Now, not to say that we haven't had to be flexible and shift with the times. We did about 2 million in revenue for 3 years in a row the last 3 years. In the last 3 years, pull those out and look at them individually. Those are vastly different markets, each one of those years. And the business, my flipping business in particular has had to shift, multiple times. And, thank goodness I haven't had to burn it all down and start over again, like a lot of these stories that I'm hearing where they fired their whole sales team and shut their office down. And, now they pivoted and they're doing this. And that's great. But we have kept what we had going. And we've just kind of bent and maneuvered to where we keep things going. So it's more strategy. It's staying to connected to a higher circle of guys that are doing it better than you, that have been doing it longer than you, that have been through these cycles before, and just making sure that you're staying in the right track. But if you know that you're in the right track and you're getting that feedback, it's head down, blinders on, and doing the things that are hard to do day in and day out. Consistency.
Love it, love it. And we're going to dive into that part about team because that's something that's really been challenging for a lot of investors, especially when the market gets tight and you've been able to maintain that team. But before we dive into that, you've got hundreds of deals under your belt, and you kind of just talked about, the ability that you did 2 million 3 years in a row, but it was three different markets,
Yeah.
which demonstrates you were able to make pivots, decisions quickly without sacrificing accuracy. How did you go about developing that skill? Because so many times as entrepreneurs, we're like, okay, we need to make a decision, but fear prevents the right? The speed of implementing that decision or even making a decision, much less evaluating the property, making offers, managing contract, right? Or the whole thing.
Yeah, yeah. Well, I'd say if I was doing all of the, talking to sellers, making offers, running numbers, dispoing deals, working TC, like I would not have the speed to be able to make those decisions. I'm able to focus on the business because I'm not stuck in the business. So, I mean, that was step one of, get myself away from the calls. And then it was get myself away from, the attorneys and all the email. And then it was, get myself away from running all the one-on-ones and the management calls. And, so I have a general manager that, kind of handles a lot of the day-to-day, and he and I talk a lot as far as strategy is concerned, but it frees my headspace up to where I can think a majority of the time, is the strategy that we're currently implementing going to take us where we want to go 90 days from now, 180 days from now. So the decisions that I make feel slow because I'm not implementing them. I may be assisting implementing them, but I'm mainly giving the direction, and certain team members, depending on the directive, is doing that implementation, and I'm having to wait for the results, and then we're having to work through all of the kinks that come from those results and smooth that process out. And there have been a lot of those changes the last 36 months, just trying to stay relevant. It is not I know not all of these listeners are real estate specific, so I don't want to harp on it, but it has been a difficult last few years in comparison to the 3 years before that. And that's fine. That's business. That's another thing that I've kind of had to come to terms with is, this isn't easy. And that's okay. It's not supposed to be easy, but like the challenging aspects bring with it the enjoyment from when you hit your strides. And you don't get the enjoyment from your strides if you didn't have to go through the challenging parts initially.
Yeah, well, there's no doubt that in a lot of industries, being an entrepreneur right now has definitely had some challenges.
Yeah.
But the fact that you're doing 2 million and it was hard, it's like, a lot of people would be, they'd be thrilled if they did 200,000. And then there's some that 2 million, they're like 2 million. Well, we didn't do 20 million. And it just reminds me, when you talk to different people, it's so important to remember that perspective is incredibly dependent on a number of things, depending on where anyone is at in their journey.
Yeah, it's all relative.
Exactly. But the one thing that is the same in everyone's journey is there is some kind of day-to-day grind.
Yep.
There's some kind of day-to-day routine, whatever it is. In real estate, it could be acquisitions, it could be project management, negotiations, whatever it is. What part of the daily energizes you the most today?
Definitely not my inbox.
I think we can all agree.
That's where most of my time is sucked into, and I actually haven't hired an executive assistant yet. It's kind of a carrot I've been dangling for myself for a certain benchmark to hire an EA that's going to be kind of the final piece to take over those things for me, to really provide some good distance there. But we won't go down that road. We'll go down. Your question was what fuels me. What part of the day-to-day fuels me? Is that what you're asking?
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
I think just the little wins. Like I'm going to try not, let's see, that would be on the less granular side. The more generalized side would just be seeing the little bits of movement and progress. Like business for me is a game. It's a difficult game. It's an emotional game. It's a head game. And I try to, as much as I can, get out of the weeds. But there's an aspect of being in the weeds that, is just kind of mandatory. for individual roles. And I think when I am in the weeds for certain periods of time and I'm able to help with implementation on a certain task, or the directives that I gave, I see those things playing out. For example, we bolted on a different exit strategy for our acquisitions company, and we that had some delay to be able to start seeing that happen, and that's my impatience coming in of having to wait for that result to start happening. And then when the result does start to happen, we have problems. We got some fires that we got to put out. We've got some processes that need tweaking to be able to make them better, to result in less of those issues coming up. And I think it's just seeing that and looking back 60 days from where we are now, and looking at where we're at, and say, like, all of those little things resulted into a much smoother process. And isn't it nice now to watch that process happen and be able to kind of step back from it, and it still operate?
So that reminds me of a guest I interviewed. It was probably sometime last year, but yeah, and if I tell you the name, you've probably heard of him, but big wholesaler, does other things, but primarily wholesales. And he always says, fall in love with the process. And you would ask him, and he doesn't even worry about the results. He's like, the outcome's irrelevant. It's all about the process. He's like, if you're in love with the product, the outcome will take care of itself. And it's interesting because some people will say it's all about the results, and some people say it's all about the process. Some people love the results, but they don't love the process. And then you were talking about, well, I love the process, but we didn't talk about the results. Neither is right or wrong.
Right.
But what do you think about the relationship of the process? Absolutely critical, because it's the day-to-day. We better like it, or we're not going to stick around too long. But we do want to give the results some value, or maybe it's okay to not. Like, what are your thoughts on this whole idea of process versus results and balancing that out?
In my opinion, you have to have a clear vision of what the results are going to be in order to build the correct process for it. So, and if you're going to put the effort into the process, you have to be excited about the results. So I kind of see it as 50-50. I mean, you can't lock on to either and hug it, not let go. You have to disconnect yourself. You got to fall in love and be really clear. You can't fall in love unless it's crystal clear. So you got to get clear what the result is. You got to fall in love with the result, and then you got to let go. Then you got to go over to the process, and you have to reverse engineer the result to create the process. And then from that point, I agree. You kind of bear hug the process, and you don't let go of that, and you almost stay over there. And that's kind of, with golf, it's so easy to focus on where you want the ball to land, and you're so focused on what if you don't make this putt, you're gonna bogey, and but you're messing up the process because of that, because you're so focused on the score, you're so focused on the ball, where the ball placement, you're not focused on just the swing process that creates the result. So I think it's one, and then it's the other. You can't have them at the same time, because then your attention is split. You've got to have 100%.
Yeah, no, that's a good word, which kind of leads to this next question I had is, we've been around for a little while, right? You've done this for a while, and there's a number of investors now in our market and really across country that have been at this for a while. And, now we're connected through social media. We've met people, all these events and so forth. But a lot of investors have burned out as they scaled. They've built it, and I've heard the stories of people that spend and just an example, they spend $1,500,000 on PPC, but the company's not really growing because, right, that one aspect is swallowing. It kind of takes the fun away. Yes, they've built it up. They have all these teams. It's stale, but it's not producing what was sought. In some cases, people have built some up that did produce the result, but they just got tired of it. They burned out. How have you kept your company, Barrington, grounded integrity, professionalism, but maybe most importantly, aggressive in keeping things forward and keeping things exciting, especially in this more recent years.
Yeah. I think I mean, first of all, morning routine. I don't think I would, I don't think I'd make it without a morning routine. I mean, I'm super in my head. I've got to refresh myself. I've got to remind myself, what's truly important. And that answer is not work. And, I like how Alex Hormozy, kind of puts it. It's like, one day I'm going to be dead and there's going to be a funeral, and this might be a little morbid, but like somebody's probably going to be complaining about the food at my funeral or the timing or the weather, or there's going to be people that just couldn't make it because timing didn't work out, things got busy, whatever. And then a short while after that, I kind of just stopped being thought about, and it's over and people are back to, so not to be super morbid, but like we are a tiny speck on a big planet and a tiny, in a massive universe that is ever expanding at the speed of like, just realize like sometimes I have to go there mentally just to like get out of my head and be like, dude, this is not that big of a deal. Like this is important. This is a goal. We're on this earth we have this life to grow and to become better. But sometimes you have to readjust your expectations and realize that it's not the end of the world. And that's when I go back to the game mentality. This is the game. And so when you do that, to me, it becomes lighter and it becomes a little bit more fun, but I have to keep reminding myself of that on a reoccurring basis. So I don't know if that answers your question, but like headspace is huge because entrepreneurship is such a mental game. And when you burn out, in my opinion, it's because you've lost that mental game. You kind of got beaten at that side of it. Not to say that some people just want to hang the hat up of a certain thing and pivot to do something else. And that's totally fine too. That's kind of a different conversation. But I think largely the ones who burn out are the ones that created the business that wasn't performing. It wasn't paying them what they thought all the work was going to be able to get them to do. And then they decided to pivot. Because if it was, I don't know why they would necessarily stop that. I know of a couple reasons, but I think largely it's the other way. It's the other way around.
Well, some people actually have gotten like bored with their business, and you're just like, yeah, it's successful, but the challenge is not there. So for some people, they seek a new challenge, but
I would love for that. I find it hard to believe that the markets that we've been in the last few years would result in a business not having challenges to the point where it gets boring. I don't know if I've talked to anybody that has just kind of lost all their challenges and every money is just coming easy. Except for my buddy who I'm very jealous of, just sold his business and now he gets to play real life Monopoly and just place his dollars in different investments and watch them grow, which is cool and something that we all work towards. But yeah, it's a challenging game and just another side of that. I mean, I've bolted on a lot of additional businesses, and the reason that I've done that is because the quick flip, wholesale, do some rehabs here and there, buy some rental properties, like the single family space, largely for me that got boring. It doesn't mean that I left it because I'm trying to take it to a different level. But I have done other things. Like I started a hard money lending business. We started a private mortgage portfolio. There's other things. We've gotten into some commercial and started to phase out our single families and go into the triple net lease game. So there's other things that we've kind of graduated to maybe like elevate the game a little bit or move the carrot. So I do agree with that aspect of things kind of getting a little boring at times and wanting to do something different. I've just tried to keep them aligned within the same, kind of vertically integrated aspect.
I love it. So, I mean, those are some victories right there, just getting into those spaces, starting those additional companies. What's a moment in your journey so far that you would say, you know what, I'm genuinely proud of this?
Hmm. I think that I have to be, my wife reminds me of this a lot. She does a good job of just kind of resetting me because it's such a, entrepreneurship is such a double-edged sword. Like on, especially with social media, with the masterminds, with all of these things. I mean, I'm flying all over the place, 8 times a year, plus or minus, getting in big rooms of people who make me look like a little fish in a big sea again. And I do that over and over. And so that changes your, every time I'm there, I am, wow, I should be so much further by now. Wow, this person's done something that I hadn't even thought of doing. Man, I can't believe I'm still doing what I'm doing. I feel like I should have elevated to X, Y, and Z by now based on this particular person. And then you come back home and sometimes you fall back into that other comfortable mindset. I'm the big shot, where I live, or my house, or my this or my that. So you kind of have to find your sweet spot there. And the hard part mentally is being, as Andy Frisella calls it, blissfully dissatisfied. It's like that my wife and I have so many, we used to have so many almost arguments about this because I always want to grow. How can I take that next level up? How fast can I get there? And she is, I'll live in a cabin in the woods with you with our kids and a dog, and I don't need money, and I'll be happier than anybody. And I can't do that. So I have to we have to battle. We kind of battle with that, and she's understood now where I'm coming from with that blissfully dissatisfied term. I'm very happy with where I am and what I've accomplished. However, I want to grow. I want to take that next step. And if you want that, and I think of a lot of entrepreneurs want to grow and scale and level up in life, fitness, business, etc., you kind of have to have a little bit of negativity associated with where you're at currently, but it can't be unhealthy. So it's a very gray line
Yeah.
of, I'm blissfully dissatisfied with where I'm at currently. Kind of like the gap in the gain too is another example. Don't compare yourself with where you have yet to get. Compare yourself with how far you've come.
Yeah. Yeah. If we take the time to realize all the little victories we had, it gives us a healthier perspective because we do win a lot,
Oh yeah.
but we're always aiming for something bigger, and so it's easy to minimize or, quite frankly, take for granted. The,
The wins now that I used to, we used to have Casey and I used to have a deal when we did a $30,000 deal or north of $30,000. We would go out and, we'd go have an awesome steakhouse. This is when we lived in Atlanta. So there are way better options to choose from, but we go out for a steak dinner, spend $250 and, celebrate and whatnot. 30,000 deal closes now, and I don't even celebrate. I don't even like, I'm like, nice, but it's probably going to go pay some expenses or pay some bills or pay, it's like I don't think about it the same. So it is like I understand the burnout aspect, because you stop celebrating the same little wins, but you have to go back and not forget about all of those things, and where you've come from, and the stuff that you used to celebrate. It doesn't necessarily mean that you shouldn't celebrate those now, at least internally a little bit.
it reminds me of the adage about we all remember our first deal,
Yeah, it's
and
very true.
we never
Very,
forget that first
very
deal.
clearly.
Yes. So, speaking of stepping back, let's step back in time a little bit. After you left college, you went into the world briefly of industrial commercial real estate.
That's right.
which is its own world, right? It's fast paced, transactional, but the transactions don't tend to be the fastest. And in that time you did commercial, and I know you didn't do it for a long time, but in that time you did do it, what was something you learned that was super valuable that you leverage in your business today?
Hmm. That I was unemployable.
There you go.
Not nothing that I'm doing in my business now. I didn't get any skills. I built everything that I know how to do through School of Hard Knocks, just getting out there and doing it. I didn't learn anything from college that I'm applying now, other than maybe social skills. And I was only there, like you said, for about 7 or 8 months, and I got my real estate license there. But
Okay.
to be honest, I let that go inactive after about 2 years of going into real estate investment, just because it wasn't really helping me that much. And my wife ended up getting her license when she quit her teaching job and came to work with me. So she kind of took over that, where we could run the commissions through hers instead of mine. There was a little bit too much disclosure that I didn't like doing, me being the investor and a licensed agent, that I just let that go inactive. So I think, for a little bit more detail, I just learned that, like, I can't take orders from somebody. I can't I can't have a boss. I've tried it so many times, with other jobs, and for some reason, like, I just have to be the one that makes it happen for me. If I'm doing it for somebody else, um, I just become lazy. Like a different person, and it took me a while to figure that out. I mean, I got fired like from 6 jobs or something. Even got let go from that one. My dad fired me when I was working for him back in the day. Yeah, it's weird. Um, but that's how it was. I needed to create. I wasn't fitting into the box that, like, everybody else seemed to be fitting in, and I didn't know what that meant until I realized that I had to build my own box.
Well, that is what we do as entrepreneurs. So when you got let go from that job, like, it's like, all right, we're pivoting into this thing called real estate investing. Like, what was some of those things going through your head at the time?
Oh,
Because
I was terrified.
a lot of investors, they want to do it, but they they just can't take that first step.
Yeah, and I had stumbled into rehabbing houses through a podcast about a few months after I got that job, and I was like, I went all in. I knew that, like, it was going to take me a few years to develop a 6-figure salary at that agent job. And so, I mean, I was under a broker, and it's heavy relationship game. You got to build your pipeline, cold call, that stuff. And I was like, I need to make some more money. I need a side gig, and so that's how I stumbled into this. And I went pretty hard at it, because again, it was up to me, and my effort percentage changed drastically. I was putting so much more effort into my side gig in comparison to the job out of college that I should have been going all into. It should have been being a relative term. And then one thing or another, I got let go from that, and I said, well, I guess this is gonna be it, because I'm definitely not set to go get another position somewhere, apparently, based on my track record. And I'm too embarrassed to tell my family that I've gotten, fired from my first real job out of college. So I'm going to take the next 2 months and not say anything, and literally just engorge myself in every content that I can find, build a business plan, get super dialed in on what I want. And then I'm going to tell my parents. And I was like 24, I guess, when all of this was happening. And that's what I did. So I spent October and November, or November and December, doing that, just staying home all day, watching, YouTube University, and Bigger Pockets, reading forum post after forum post after forum post, podcasts, what was available back then, and reading books,
Mm,
taking notes, building the business plan, and that was the start.
love it. Well, in those early years in business, we have moments that are like prove it type moments. And the first proof is prove to yourself that it's going to work,
Yeah.
right? Prove to yourself, can I actually go wholesale deal? Can I actually go remodel a property? Can I actually buy a property and actually rent it and actually get passive income, which I know rentals aren't really that passive, but generally speaking,
And if you would
what
have asked me back then in the beginning, I would have been I would have sounded super confident that like, oh yeah, I got this. This is my thing. I'm going to be a millionaire, blah blah blah. But like internally, extreme lack of confidence that I would like. I used to think that it was like this. I would I be one of the lucky ones to be able to make it? Would I be the ones being, one of the guys interviewed on podcasts, all the podcasts that I was listening to? Like, will I be a success story? Like it's going to be this frou like spiritual selection of me if I get to be one of those people. And the more that I win after win after win after win, I realized year after year, it's just a math equation. It's a math equation of processes plus effort equals results. And then eventually you have so much effort that's required to work the processes that you have to start bringing on a team. You can't do it all anymore. And then the more team you bring on, the less it is about the processes for you as it is the management and the leadership and the guiding of those team members. And it becomes more of a people game than a process game. And so it's just this whole evolution. That's why you have to continue to be centered and circled around people that have done it before you time and time again, preferably the way that you plan on doing what you're doing, so you can make sure you're staying in that track. Because you can preach head down, blinders on, as long as you want, but if you're not surrounded by the right people and bouncing what you're doing off of people that have been there before, you'll head down, blinders on, right into the wrong direction, way off that way. So that's a big piece to it.
So back, and I agree. It's yeah, we could talk a long time about what you just said.
But the first win, the first win was when I got that first. I had that first deal closed. It was a little. I bought it as a rehab. I went to a real estate meetup, first mastermind. Flew out to California, went to go see it. Talked to a guy, and he was like, "Why don't you wholesale?" I was like, what's wholesaling? He was like, well, it's where you don't buy it and you find somebody else that'll buy it. But I already bought it. So it was technically a wholesale before anybody was using that word.
Right.
And I said, well, nobody's going to buy it for more than I paid for it. Like I maxed out. I have my calculators. Like I know my numbers, all this stuff. And he's like, why are you negotiating for somebody that you don't even know how they run their numbers or why they might want the property? And long story short, I went home, I did some marketing. I had it sold like a couple weeks later and I made like 16 grand. And that was the first wire transfer into my bank account. And that was the prove it moment for me. Like that wire hit. I remember showing my parents on the app, my banking app on my phone. I was just giddy with excitement because I knew that if I could do it one time, I could go do it 100 times. And it was just this realization moment of, all right, this is real. It's game time.
Love it. I love it. What was a moment back in those early days, and maybe not that early, that really shook your confidence really hard, but ultimately helped shape you into a better leader?
Um, I won't get into the details, but just employee issues, employee problems, miscommunications about different items or issues with compensation and what somebody believes they're worth versus what you're paying them, and issues with their just people problems. That learning how to develop and lead a team, I think I've learned the most. Like real estate's real estate. You can flip deals like it, but it's kind of finite. But like you can never stop becoming a better leader, a better manager. And then there's so many intricacies and dilemmas that you can run into that you never experienced before when it involves people. Um, I almost kind of envy the one man, shops. And when I used to, do a 40 grand deal and I got to keep 35,000 of it. And now it's much different. But I'm not doing all the things anymore. So not to get too far away from the point, but I've been shook a couple times just by really having to have hard conversations with team members about growth, and especially like my executive level team that you know that have had multiple escalations or what do you call it? Escalations in the business that I want to keep around, and how to make sure I have not just the right person, but make sure that the right person is also in the right seat, because I've messed up by having the right person and had them in the wrong seat. And it took me a long time to figure that out. I've messed up by having the wrong person in the right seat, and every other combination, of that. So people are the magic in real estate. I'm not real estate and entrepreneurship, and people are also the nightmare in entrepreneurship.
Well, if there's one thing we all know is people problems never go away.
No.
They never will. And that doesn't mean people are bad, of course, right? But the reality is we're all on a journey. And with that journey comes challenges. And so let me ask you, kind of piggybacking off of that, you started hiring people, you had a belief about how to work with teams and this, that, and the other. And then as it evolved, the thinking evolved, right? Because we evolve as entrepreneurs. What's a belief you had when you were in the early days of being an entrepreneur that you would say now today is completely rewritten?
Hmm. A belief that I had back then that I don't necessarily believe now. I don't know. I don't have a great answer for that one off the rip. Um, I mean, there's so many things. I mean, I used to think I had a business. Let's call it, back in the early days. When I look at what I didn't have a business. I had a hobby. Like it was
Mm.
just the rules were different back then. I think it's maybe less of, one finite thing that like has completely changed versus everything's changed. It's the whole it's a different rule book entirely. And it's just you have to continue to learn the rules, and learn how to get better at a different game, because the game keeps evolving.
Yeah, that's for sure. That is for sure. Well, let's talk about that game for a moment. And that's today's market
Yeah.
is not for the faint of heart.
No.
Not, 2021, if you breathed, we had a few months there where everybody was Superman. Not everybody, but a lot of people.
Yep.
Now, not so much. Interest rates are high. Sellers stubbornly holding on
Yeah.
to their loans, their equity, their whatever, right? A lot of deals are tighter. Okay. From your
Yep.
frontline experience, what's working today? This is June 2025. What is actually working right now?
What's actually working right now for us is going wider versus deeper. I've always been a deep versus wide mentality guy, and I still am. But for the type of business, for this particular acquisitions business, and because of the just massive lack of transactional volume that we were used to seeing and dried up to what it is now, we've had to open the geo basically and go to larger areas. So we're running, we're very heavy on PPC right now with Google AdWords, and we're in 9 or 10 different states. And we are, statewide marketing, getting stuff all over the place. I mean, we're doing deals in cities I can't even pronounce, and states that I've never been to, that I'd never planned to go to. Everything's operated virtually. We Our lending business is in Georgia and the Carolinas, so we're staying in the tri-state there. But again, what's working is I enjoyed the aspect of finding loans a lot easier than it might have been to find deals. With loans, I can go give loans to the investors that let them go find the hard to get deals. And I can still reap a benefit or profit off of them needing my financing to close their deals, while I'm still working on the acquisition side. So long story short, another reason is South Carolina passed a bill that said wholesaling was illegal, May of 2024. So that was a big, kind of wrench thrown in the machine. And we made the decision to discontinue marketing properties before taking ownership of them in South Carolina. And we moved heavily into North Carolina. Turns out same thing is kind of in the works there. And I don't know, what the world of wholesaling real estate looks like in 5 years. I don't know if copy legislature, puts that all over the place, but for right now, we're eliminating single points of failure. We're utilizing other exit strategies, not just novations, and going into additional states kind of spreads out our liability there versus the last 5 years, 6 years. We were 80% in South Carolina, all of our marketing dollars there for the most part. And, snap your fingers. And now all of a sudden it's illegal to do that. It's kind of crazy to say, but that's what happened.
Yeah, yeah, no, we've seen that legislation, and we do have to wonder, 5 years from now, will wholesaling be legal anywhere? I mean, it probably will be, but it'll probably look a bit different than it does today.
Yeah.
And there's unfortunately a good thing has been maybe a little too popularized. It's caused a few too many challenges, and as
Exactly.
the saying goes, one bad apple. That's all it takes to
Yep.
mess up stuff.
Yeah, that's how regulation works, and things get real popular and loud, and then it starts getting abused, and people start getting taken advantage of, and they got to come in and lay down some ground rules. It's just, unfortunately, in my opinion, the rules that are getting laid down make zero sense, and they're only hurting. Not only, but it is hurting the end seller as far as having a lack of options to get rid of a property in a couple weeks versus how long it takes to traditionally do it. And the fact that it's being led by the board of realtors kind of says a whole nother thing. But again, we won't go super real estate deep on on this
That's a
conversation.
whole nother conversation right there.
Yeah.
So you talked about going wider, and a question I would have is, how do we know when to go wide versus like, and then you have like, the book, The One Thing, for example. And it's like, just do that one thing. Today with, all the options to learn, YouTube, social media, coaching, now you have AI. When, people are like, well, AI is going to replace coaching. No, but, there's a tandem in there that's necessary. You need both
Yeah.
because AI is not going away. So, and AI is wonderful in many respects. But at some point, it's too easy to get caught up in all the strategies. For many investors, they never master one before they're into the second, third, fourth, fifth. In fact, I'm one of those people. So I have firsthand knowledge of this.
Mhm.
But I've since believed I really need to master one thing before you go to the next, the next, the next. It's just too easy to get distracted.
Right.
How does an investor who says, I want to rehab, I want to do rentals, whatever the strategy is, how do they know, okay, we've mastered this, now we can add?
How do they know when they
How do
can move
they
to the
know,
next
yeah,
thing?
when is it okay to now add strategy number two or three or four? Because it's just too easy to do it. And the next thing you know, you're fragmented.
Yeah. In my opinion, obviously there's caveats to everything. I hate caveats, but it's a part of life.
Sure.
You could say a bolt-on or a new distraction could be if you're a flipper, could the distraction be buying rental properties? In my opinion, I'm glad I got into that distraction, if you want to call that a distraction early, because it's built a lot of my wealth, flipping a few and buying one, flipping a few and buying one, and buying one being back in 2016, that's a lot of equity growth in there. I don't think that that in particular, or if you're talking about a passive strategy bolting onto an active strategy, I don't think that's a distraction. I think an active strategy and then bolting on another active strategy is the distraction. So, for
Mm,
example, if you're a flipper or if you're running another type of business, and then you want to go start another type of active income generation business. So for me, a flipper and then going into hard money lending, those are two active income businesses that require a lot of time. So for me, it was a money factor and a time factor that I had. So I had to buy my time back through hiring people and then still net a certain amount to be able to go and start the next thing.
mm. Well, that's a really great distinction you made about active versus passive. Because they are, even though the passive things do still take time, nothing like the actives.
Right.
So
Yeah.
I like that distinction. That's a good way to think about it. But I think that's necessary for people to consider because typically you just see people bouncing from thing to thing to thing, and then 1 to 2 years later, they're gone.
Right.
Too much, too fast, not enough focus, doesn't work out. Which now, in today's world, now we've had the TV shows for a long time. You've got all the different podcasts. Real estate investing has become, it's much more mainstream now than it was, 10 years ago, 15 years ago.
Yeah. Unfortunately.
Yeah, that's a whole nother thing. But newer investors today, they're navigating a very different landscape. As you said, the rule book is very different. In each of the
Yep.
strategies, the rule book's quite different. What do you say to someone today that's like, hey, you're about to get started, whether maybe they're new to entrepreneurship, maybe they're a business owner and they just want to do something new, regardless of their level of experience in business. What do you tell that person that's getting into it today? Here's the one thing you got to do, and by the way, here's the one thing you got to make sure you don't do.
Yeah, I think just it's understanding what their goals are, right? It's going back to getting clarity on their goals. And then we're working. I mean, this is what I'm doing with the Private Wealth Academy. My coaching group is we're working backwards to create scorecards for KPI metrics and dashboards essentially on what the monthly, weekly, daily things are that they need to be doing in order to hit their goals. Because in the beginning, like I said, it was a am I going to be one of the lucky ones thought, when really it should have been, if I do X, Y, and Z for X amount of time period, I'm going to get Y result. And there's no ifs, ands, or buts about it. And so once you know that you're doing the right things, you can head down, blinders on, and go. I'm setting expectations and saying it's not going to be as easy as you think it's going to be. If you think it's going to be hard, it's going to be a little harder than you think it's going to be. If you think it's going to take X amount of time, it's going to take a little bit longer than that. And just kind of right sizing expectations. And like there's a reason that not everybody is doing this. But here's the benefits that you can get excited about, that you can, your reward per se.
Love it. What led you to get into coaching? You mentioned the academy, and I know you've been getting into that. What made you pull that trigger to get into that space?
I've had one-on-one client specifically for like 5 years. And I've had others just kind of off and on, but I never advertised it. But if somebody wanted mentorship, and I talked with them and I thought that they were a good fit and I enjoyed hanging out with them, then I would do something with them. That was really the extent of it. But I get asked more and more, especially with doing more social media content and shorts and all that stuff. It's, hey, can I take you to dinner? Can we go to coffee? Can I get 30 minutes of your time to pick your brain? Can we do a Zoom? And I just, I had to do two things. I had to create a way to give them actual value, because I couldn't do that in 30 minutes. There was no way that I could actually deliver them something that they could go execute on versus just like telling my story in 30 minutes or an hour. And then B is I had to make it worth my time. I had to create essentially uh, a blueprint, a can't think of the right word, but create a process, for lack of better words, for them to be able to come into, to be able to get the information, like download what I've learned over the last 10 years and give it to them in bite-sized pieces to where they could actually execute on that. So I had the one-on-one stuff and that was cool, but a lot of people didn't want to pay for the one-on-one, the one-on-one price tag. And so I created the Private Wealth Academy, which is like, lower ticket group coaching, and did that for a while on like a monthly subscription that we did weekly group calls. And, they had access to all my documents and contacts and all of that stuff. And now it's kind of evolved into something else, which includes a little bit of both. You get the group coaching, you get one-on-one, you get my blueprint of behind the scenes, how we do multiple seven figures a year in our flipping business, how we roll that cash and do long-term deals to grow wealth and cash flow, and all the above. So it's kind of changed as everything else has, right, over the last couple of years. But I enjoy it. And now I can actually see people that are getting results from what I'm saying versus like a 30-minute coffee and, who knows what happens with that or what they took from that.
Love it. So a lot of people today have a lot of options when it comes to coaching. Coaching is also blown up into now everyone's a coach and everything's this, but the reality is there's a lot of coaches that don't have the track record. They don't have the experience. They don't have the successes and the failures they've had to recover from and these sorts of things. The grueling side, not just the, hey, look, this is HGTV worthy side.
Yep.
But the average person looking for coaching mentorship doesn't know that.
True.
Who is Parker Stiles today? And what I mean by that is it's that person that people are attracted to. They're coming to you. You're not even soliciting. They're coming to you and saying, Parker, basically help.
Yeah.
What's what make you unique, do you think, that pulls them in?
I think I'm not flashy. I think I give away a lot of content. Almost, I've got somebody that advises me on my coaching, and I get a lot of times that I'm being told a lot of the times that I'm giving away too much value, as dumb as that sounds. It's like you need to tell more of the what, not the how. And I'm all about like, this is what you need to do. This is how you need to do it in order to get this. And like, there's so many gems being thrown around that like, it's not even really Like the mind is gravitates to the flashy, the what, the result, right? And then you end up going all these webinars, right? I stopped watching webinars a long time ago because every single webinar that I got on, all it was 45 minutes of storytelling and the what basically and the result of it. Not there was no nuts and bolts. The only nuts and bolts was at the last 5 minutes, pitching the $15,000 course, and here's where you may get the nuts and bolts of it. And so I think that to go back to your question, I think people gravitate to me specifically organically because they've just seen me doing it for 10 years. I got so many people that direct message me that just say like, dude, me and you were friends. I remember back when, when you had done your first or you done your second, or like, I've been following you since. And I feel bad because I don't know who, a lot of these people are, but like they've been watching me. They've seen the failures, they've seen the wins, they've seen the consistency. And now they're like, I'm tired of not doing X, Y, and Z for myself. Parker must have something specific that he can help me with to get my ass in gear. And I'll be honest, a lot of the times, what mentorship is, like everybody knows what to do for the most part. They know what to do to get started. They're just not getting started. It's a kick in the ass that people need most of the times. I mean, I'll use a vulnerable example on the weightlifting. So I've been lifting weights for since high school, but for some reason I would never go do legs. Right? I was the little pixie stick legs, not, but I never worked out legs. And I make excuses like I'm gonna go ride my mountain bike, or oh, I do this or I do that, to get my leg worked out. But I never did legs because it sucks. Nobody wants to work out legs. I kind of like it now that I've gotten into it, but like it's a very uncommon thing to enjoy working out lower body because it's hard. It takes a lot of you to be able to do a little bit of the lifts, but it helps you in every other area of working out. It builds testosterone because you're tearing such. Anyway, rambling here. The point is, I had to hire a trainer for legs for a year. And I did that because I knew that if I wasn't paying somebody and I had to show up at a certain place at a certain time, a different gym rather than my other gym, it was like a trainer's gym, to go do it, that I wasn't going to do it. And I had to do that for about a year. And then I fired the trainer, but I kept going to that same gym. I did that for about another 6 months. And then I went back to my regular gym, and now I do legs every Monday like clockwork. And it's no, but I couldn't get in the track of doing that. I had to pay somebody and I had to put myself in a program basically to get myself to have the just the just to do it. But I knew what to do all along. And I think a lot of people know what they need to do. They're just too scared to do it, or they need that kick in the butt. Or maybe it's a confidence play. And that was something that I can relate to with my first one-on-one coach that I hired. I barely used him, but he was there for me if I had a problem that I needed his help on immediately. It was a crutch. It was a soft landing if I needed one that I kind of prepaid for. So I don't know. The coaching realm is weird, and it's been blown out of proportion a lot. But that's kind of how I view it.
I love it. I love it. So let me ask you one more question, just because you brought up this. I mean, basically, what we're talking about is accountability, right? You need that.
Exactly.
That, and we know if we don't pay for it, we're probably not going to pay attention. It's just human nature. And I know, especially in today's world, first with social media, then you have YouTube University, now you have AI, and you can get it all for free.
Yeah. Yeah.
But in spite of all the information out there available, I mean, if you think about all the information available, anyone should be able to be a real estate investor and be super successful, and it'd be easy.
Yeah.
And yet 90+% of people quit within a year or two. It doesn't work out. despite all the information. So clearly it's not, we need more information.
I think it's people being tied to the immediate gratification aspect of just everything else in their life. And nothing worthwhile comes immediately. And everything worthwhile takes longer and more effort than most likely you think it's going to take. And the fact that everything else in our world has gone towards that immediate gratification, it's like, it's a muscle basically, and most people's muscle when it comes to being able to, the stick with itness muscle, call it that. Like everybody's weak.
Yeah.
It's withered away.
So how do you get people to understand? They come to you and they say, Parker, I want you to coach me on what? And it's going to cost, oh, I don't know if I can afford that. To understand, it's not pay to play. It's pay so that you're actually going to be invested in yourself.
Mm-hmm.
And you've got that skin in the game. You have to commit. And if it still doesn't work out, at least hopefully the answer is, you know what, it's just my passion's not there, whatever, right? Something that's more than just I didn't put in the effort, I got busy. I like the way you put it actually about, wait a minute, this isn't as immediately gratifying as the 10 other things I have going on. I mean, that's a great point. I love that. But we have found that a lot of people don't want to pay because like the allure of free is so powerful, but yet it doesn't work out. How do you get people past that?
Well, a lot of people I don't get a lot of people past the, oh, that's too expensive. But they can't, again, they can't see past what that payment could get them, what their life could look like if they get that education. And I get it. I mean, like I'm looking at coaching from someone and it's $100,000. It's, I mean, that's a hard pill to swallow. But like we talked about in the beginning, it's all relative, right? And the coaching continues to escalate, and your return on investment, or the better you get, the more juice from the squeeze you can get. And I'm not saying I'm going to do that, but I have to put myself in the shoes of the person that is at the W-2 job, that's watching their pennies, and I understand that because I'm looking at that bill, and saying, "Ooh, is it worth that?" Because regardless of where you're at, like there's still an element of like asking yourself that question, and maybe a little bit more due diligence on who that person is, and reviewing P&Ls and all of the
Sure.
background and whatnot. But the short answer is there will be people, and that is going to be most people, that just are not going to invest in themselves, or it's going to take them too long to do so. Most people just play that game and they wait too long, until it's been, God, I mean, it hurts honestly when I see people say like, man, we got started at the same time. I get this a lot. We got started in REI at the same time, about 2015 or so. And so many of those guys, got taken out in the last 4 years, and they're working paycheck to paycheck. Wait, they're not at a W-2. They're still doing deals, but like they're paying for their life and waiting on the next deal to close. They had some people, but then they let them all go. So they don't have a team anymore. They're still doing it all. And it's been a decade. And I hurt for some of those people that have spent so much of their time potentially, like we talked about, they might have had their head down, blinders on, but they were just going a few degrees in the wrong direction. And here we are, 8, 9, 10 years later, and they're way, way off course, and they need some guiding, light.
Yeah. Happens more often than we realize, no doubt about it.
Yeah.
No, it's a good word. Well, Parker, I want to thank you for being on today. Just some great insights. I really appreciate you taking the time to share. And to our audience, if you want to connect with Parker, if you're interested in doing deals, reach out to him. We'll have links to his social media, his website, and so forth below. So check that out. and reach out to him if you're interested in coaching. He's doing it, so definitely, hit him up on that. Maybe that's a fit, and have that conversation. So Parker, thank you again for being on the show today. I appreciate what you've shared and the wise words, so to speak. So can you leave us with a final word?
A final word. Yeah, I would just say get really clear with your why. Even if you're already doing what you're doing, a lot of people listening to this are already business owners. So think about the business that you have right now. Is it the business that you want 5 years from now? Is it the business that you wanted 5 years ago? Has it changed? Has the market shifted? Try and pull yourself out of the weeds. I love going on little escapades with, no phone, no electronics, and just kind of thinking of, where taking notes or journaling or whatever your thing is, and just make sure that what you're still busting your ass to do, the day in, the day out, the grind, so to speak, like you mentioned, make sure that that is working in the same direction that you initially wanted it to be going in, and that things haven't shifted in front of you, but yet you haven't shifted with them, and you're starting to work in the wrong direction.
Love it. Love it. That's a
Thanks,
good
Frank.
word. So, Parker, I want to thank you again. Great stuff, man. So, I look forward to continuing the conversation.
Good catching up. Thanks for having me.